Nina Khrushcheva, Dobre Utra to Moscow. Thank you for joining us today after this very dramatic weekend and all the events that unfolded. My first question would be, what do you think was your overruling sentiment on that Saturday, being in Moscow? Were you more scared that Prigozhin would win this mutiny or that Putin would win and stay in power?
Hi, thank you. Actually, first of all, it wasn't really a surprise. In fact, I did write an article about 3 weeks ago, kind of predicting that it would happen if Putin continues to be silent, if Putin continues to sort of use Prigozhin and his even right wing, more bloody nationalism than Putin's to counterbalance Putin's own army, because Putin likes this kind of counterbalancing one against another, because that keeps him indispensable for all the parties involved, since then he becomes the arbiter of who gets up and who gets down. So he was using Prigozhin for this, and but it was obvious that it would happen, because Prigozhin already at the end of, he's been pushing against armies, saying Wagner is the only really military force that can be successful in Ukraine. But already at the end of May, he gave an interview to a right-wing website in which he said all this. He said that he's calling for a revolution. He said that Putin needs to kind of get right-wingier and bloodier and really just have the full mobilization, complete militarization of society and the state. So the fact that Putin was then silent for almost a month and everybody thought, oh, it was such a surprise, is kind of shocking to me, because if I knew that it was bound to happen soon enough, how could they not know? And we also saw now the information that the United States did know, which I actually thought, we can talk about this, which I thought was a very, what they really, on one hand, they worried about the nuclear arms and didn't want to have more militarized Russia. On the other hand, they're so eager to get to Putin that they were silent about this. It's like, okay, just choose what horrible Russia you really want and which one is worse. So that was kind of an interesting balance there. I was not scared. I walked around Moscow in between a variety of kind of commentaries that I had to do. In the morning, I went all the way to the Kremlin, which is not far from me, so about 20-minute walk. Walked around the Kremlin. The Red Square was dead shut, but people were marrying all around it. And, I asked a wedding party, are they not afraid of Prigozhin? And they said, oh, which Prigozhin? Like, who the hell is Prigozhin? We're married and, nothing is going to happen, which was sort of very Russian thing, like, oh, until we're struck by lightning, we're just going to continue living our lives. There was some police of different kinds, but not really dramatic amount. There's some military vehicles, but they were more concentrated on the outskirts of Moscow rather than in the center. The mood changed by the afternoon when, and in fact, the official news were reporting that the Wagner troops are marching towards Moscow, and so people got slightly more apprehensive. But my feeling was, and I myself just didn't think it would happen, didn't think that Prigozhin would take over, because even though he was a military hero, as Putin himself said numerous times, and Wagner, but there was really not many takers. And we saw it in immediate support of the elites of Putin. Some of them spoke out, especially the governors. There's really not that many takers for Prigozhin's very violent brand of nationalism, especially nationalism that being pushed forward by his troops, which a lot of them are rapists and murderers. And I was talking to younger people, and the girls, and they were young women, they were particularly completely, I couldn't say particularly terrified, but they were more apprehensive than anybody else, because they said, well, that's not what we want. So I thought that one way or another, we saw that the Prigozhin troops were doing this stuff. They were shootouts, but it was obviously decision by the Kremlin not to attack them while they were going. And it was a question, why wouldn't they? Because,
that's what my question would be to you.
Okay.
I mean, of course, we don't know that, but the question, the situation was so bizarre because we woke up to this mutiny and thought, okay, so the Kremlin will not watch this unfold. And then it was very silent for a few hours and the army didn't do anything. Also, what you say that there was loyalty declarations for Putin, it all sounded relatively muted compared to what could have happened. So I was almost thinking, are they waiting who wins this?
I'm not sure because I think that I don't think so. I mean, we know that the governors, they have not been fans of Prigozhin and they've been quite open about it. I mean, for example, the governor of St. Petersburg, Beglov, he in fact has open fights with Prigozhin, and Prigozhin has been complaining that Beglov is not supporting, the Wagner, because Prigozhin is from St. Petersburg, from Leningrad, supporting the Wagner organization and doesn't allow them to be buried and with great honors and whatnot. And Beglov and some others, I think the governor of the Sverdlovsk region were saying, well, it's all wonderful, but your people, when they come back, they really, I mean, the fact that they were fighting and they were brave really doesn't make them reformed citizens. So we kind of don't want them around us. So there is a bit of a tension there. It was surprising. I mean, I thought that at the beginning, Putin only spoke at 10 in the morning yesterday. No, the day before yesterday. On Saturday, right. Was very forceful, saying it's mutiny, it's a stab in the back, it's treason, it's this and that. We're not going to let them get away with that. And yet here they were marching all across Russia, damaging property, damaging roads. They were in Lipetsk region, which is not far from Moscow already. The military there were digging out roads so the Wagner march wouldn't be that successful. I mean, that seemed like just the insanely bad Dr. Strangelove Russian version, Stanley Kubrick kind of ridiculous comedy, but tragedy. And so Putin was very forceful, but then nothing was done. And, of course, and I'm sure that the negotiations with Lukashenko and all around that began much earlier than we found out. But then I think the problem with Putin is that, yes, they were able to resolve the crisis. But the problem with him is that on one hand, he's waiting out to see which side and how he needs to act. But then he's rash when he is insulted. I mean, he's suddenly, because if he didn't say, oh, it's mutiny, he would say, well, these people are demanding the recognition and we are going to sort it out with them. Instead, he went out and was very angry at Prigozhin personally, because Prigozhin is his creation, and suddenly Prigozhin, not suddenly, actually it wasn't sudden, but suddenly for Putin, Prigozhin turned against him. So Putin made the statements, negotiations were going on, that's why they were not eliminating them on the road, because there would be more bloodshed. Then it's all over. Putin technically has a strong hand, because another thing that this mutiny appraisal showed is that although Putin doesn't have a strong position, I mean, we know that the war has been going on for almost a year and a half. I mean, clearly he's not winning. And the fact that Prigozhin is able to do this clearly is a sign of weakness. On the other hand, we are seeing that even if you say the response was muted, many said we want the constitutional order, we want the elected president, however Putin is elected and whatnot, but the official president. So muted or not, Putin got a little bit of a boost because it became clear that not every coup against Putin is going to be successful. So those who want that coup in the future, and I'm sure there will be many more, still would have to think carefully how to do about it. Because one of the things I'm sure Prigozhin was counting on to some degree is that because Putin is so unpopular among the elites, not necessarily among the people that much, but among the elites, that now they would take any opportunity to get him out. Well, no, that's not. And so that to some degree strengthened Putin's hands. His problem also is that he's grand up in the sky. He spoke on Saturday at 10 very forcefully, very firmly. When it was resolved Saturday night, and Lukashenko, Belarusian president, who was supposedly his mini-me or larger me doing the negotiations with Prigozhin, came out and said, we agreed on everything, Prigozhin is going to Belarus, then brilliant move would have been for Putin to come out again and said, yes, we said it's mutiny, now it's forgiven. The reason it is forgiven is XYZ, because other than that, okay, so first you said we're not going to tolerate it, and now we're tolerating it. So what's the problem? And so he got a stronger hand, but then he himself weakened it by his inability to handle crisis in front of the people.
But that's also a big question now. So Putin says Prigozhin is a traitor, then makes a deal with him. We know that Putin usually, when he calls someone a traitor, that person is expiring sooner or later by being assassinated. So is it thinkable that Prigozhin actually goes to Belarus, stays there? I mean, this is a recipe for further chaos and disaster.
Totally thinkable. I mean, you know, and that's another thing. It's like Putin, speak to whoever you want to speak to your elite, speak to the people, speak to the global community. I mean, explain something, because then it's all exactly, it's our speculation, because knowing Putin and knowing Prigozhin, by the way, Prigozhin, the man that has been promising to slaughter his enemies with sledgehammer, is going to go into a sunset in Belarus and stays there somewhere in the woods in a hut, you know, I don't know.
Not likely.
Right, exactly. Collecting stamps and growing cucumbers. It's like, no, that's just not really kind of a person. So, but we also know Putin is not forgiving of somebody who crossed his path, which exactly what Prigozhin did. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. But it's also Prigozhin. It's not some, you know, a liberal oppositionist who makes his living by arguing against the oppressive state. I mean, this is the man who wants bloodier, more militant, crazier right-winger and nationalism than Putin probably ever dreamt of. So basically this story is not over, because well, Prigozhin goes to Belarus. Does he stay there? What does he plan? But also let's remember that all these Wagnerites that are now being forgiven, they're loyal to Prigozhin. They're not loyal to Putin. I mean, they're
part maybe, no?
Well,
partly
I mean,
they stayed.
They made, I don't know. They made a deal. And I mean, in some ways it was clever, I guess, not to eliminate Prigozhin. I'm sure their hands were itching to do that, because then he would have become a martyr. And if he becomes a martyr and he was a hero of the war and this and that, that would have been created more problems. But also that kind of person being shipped off, what is he going to go to Syria? Is he going to go to Africa? What is he going to do? But also the Wagnerites that are not forgiven. I mean, some of them can join the army or some sort of military or military establishments, but some of them are going to go somewhere with Prigozhin. How they are not going to become the diversion groups, how they're not going to become people that would come back into Russia to start actually really foster a bloody revolution with a patriotic agenda that Putin supposedly, according to them, is not forceful enough about. So I think it's resolved for now, but it's clearly not over and will play out in the next few months, the next few days, in the next few years even. But even if Putin resolved it for that moment, I mean, he would certainly get more suspicious, more paranoid, and suspicious Putin is more dangerous Putin, because he becomes more rash, more I'm thinking of the consequences. So, the things that you and I discussed for many years is that he was a good tactician. I mean, now clearly that's just not working out for him anymore, because he still thinks he's the same Putin who makes decisions and then miraculously it works out. Well, miraculously nothing works out for him anymore.
Yeah. I mean, we were waiting for Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister, to appear. So this morning he appeared in a video that they posted. We don't know exactly if this was a new video or not, but he seems to be back. Otherwise, this video wouldn't be released at all. Any thoughts on this? Why Shoigu was out of the picture? There were rumors that he might have been fired, which would have been a big humiliation, because that's what Prigozhin wanted Putin to do.
Well, one of the things, I mean, Prigozhin wanted Shoigu fired for months, so that didn't happen. In fact, Shoigu stayed. Remember, there was all these military people. There was a Gerasimov, and then there was Surovikin, and Surovikin was bloodier and more forceful in fighting. And so Prigozhin was a fan of Surovikin, but was not a fan of Gerasimov, because Gerasimov was the one who supposedly looks at a bigger picture. I don't really know what the bigger picture is in this war, but supposedly, and so that's what not Prigozhin was interested in. And in fact, when Prigozhin started pushing for changes, Shoigu stayed, and Gerasimov once again got on top, and Surovikin was sort of pushed down. Not that he disappeared, but he pushed down, and then became a man in charge of connection to the Wagner group. Right after that, Prigozhin decided to go on, to have his march on Moscow.
Yes.
I mean, Putin doesn't really do things under pressure from his advisors. So if Prigozhin wants this, it's not going to happen. I think, I mean, I'm afraid to predict. I just think that it's not going to happen the way Prigozhin wants it. Shoigu may go, but it would not be as if he has done it
immediate.
Because he wanted, right? So there probably would be some shuffling. On the other hand, it may not be, because basically one of them, as you know, Russia, there's endless scenarios. One is crazier than another. And one of them, that because Putin made Prigozhin and that actually allowed him to, as I said, balance out power with the army, maybe it was all staged all together. I mean, I doubt it, but it's, nothing could be out of the realm of possibility of the crazy Byzantine Kremlin with the great secrecy and great conspiracies and whatnot. So possibly to once again push the army more into action and also with the same in the same action kind of eliminate Prigozhin, because he's become too much of a but bloodlessly eliminate Prigozhin, because he becomes too much of a liability. He becomes too much of a problem. So that's possible. I mean, that makes them very clever, but that's a possibility. But also it's possible that, I mean, Putin needs this war. He's not going to make it go away, because as long as right, exactly. As long as the war goes on, he is Putin. The minute the war, if it's not won, which I don't know how, I don't see, it doesn't seem like it can be by Russia. If it's not won, then he's a nobody. And if he's not if he's a nobody, he doesn't exist. So he will continue this slow kind of not almost offensive anymore, but defensive war in a sense. And for that, Shoigu is not bad at all. I mean, Shoigu, exactly what Shoigu has been doing. So it's possible that it will all remain the same. And it would be kind of this frozen conflict. I mean, it's not a frozen conflict, but frozen in terms of it is now. You go back a little further, you step back a little, step a little back, and so
fight in the trenches. Yeah,
right, exactly. So it may be that's Prigozhin is a dangerous figure, but the way it has played out also possibly works for Putin, because it kind of allows for a status quo, but also tells the right wingers, tells the nationalists that you'd be careful, because the fate that awaits you. So now Putin dealt with the liberal opposition. He gave a message to the right-wing opposition who wants bloody a war, and we're in a status quo situation. I mean, it's one of the scenarios. Maybe it's not going to be that peaceful.
Of course.
But the idea could be.
But what I read this just now on Telegram, an interview with Konstantin Remchukov, the editor-in-chief of Nezavisomaya Gazeta, who said that he himself, it's a bit bizarre actually, but he said that a lot of the political elite, part of them left also on their private jets on Saturday, as did the airplanes of Putin, as we could see on the flight trackers. We don't know exactly who was in these planes, but it seemed that a lot of people were quite scared, and what Remchukov now says in this interview is that he thinks that a lot of people in the elite, in the political elite, will ask Putin not to run as president again in 2024 at the next presidential elections. So now we always think like, yeah. In a dictatorship, Putin will not step down because he doesn't have to. There are no real elections. But the question is, what's your analysis? How strong the discontent in the political elite is, and how much people would wish Putin to move aside?
Well, I think a lot of people would wish Putin to move aside. They've been wishing Putin to move aside for a long, long time, including February 24th. February 22nd, when he was conducting that Security Council in 2022. So they've been wishing and willing and wanting and so on, but good luck with that. I mean, good luck to those who want to say to Putin, please don't run for president. I'm like, okay, well, if that's how to say, I mean, Remchukov is probably closer to whoever up there than I am, certainly. But I think it's a case of wishful thinking, to tell Putin not to run, because the whole point for him, all of this was about him staying in power. And so now you're going to say, well, you know what, you're just a little too much of a liability. But he has been, and so far they have done nothing, at least openly, or at least kind of visibly. I don't know. I mean, actually, I didn't see people scared. I think people were just sort of muted expectations. I'm sure the governments, people in the government would know more. I mean, in my courtyard, there's about 70 cars standing. I mean, there's 70 places, and normally, like, I don't know, 45, 50. There were 5 cars on Saturday. Everybody else cleared out. As you know, the airplanes were filled to go to Georgia, to go to Turkey. Prices shot up twice or 3 times. I mean, there were still planes left to occupy, to be passengers in, but prices were very high, and then they started subsiding. But that's the point. Is not how to say that. I mean, it was a clear crisis, and I think the crisis would be more and more and more, and that crisis certainly doesn't help Putin in the long run. But in the short run, he continues on. And it does seem to be that's what he's sort of gearing at, because he thinks that every crisis which he's able to resolve one way or another, no matter how badly, is still something that allows him to continue on in power. I think he is delusional. I agree that there would be one crisis when all these elites would say, forget it, that's it, we can't do it. But we've been waiting for that for a long time. There've been many of them in the last year and a half. And still, I mean,
nothing happened.
Nothing happened, and the governors are there, and they showed Mishustin, the prime minister, in his workplace, and Sergei Sobyanin, the mayor of Moscow, said, we're continuing on. And so, yes, that would be a rational solution, but so far, and as you know, Russia is not always rational. It's not from A to B to C. It's from A to Z to K to B and back. Yes, this time will come, and every crisis leads to that moment. But I really think that we cannot with certainty say when that moment will come.
I was thinking of Alexej Navalny in his cell on the weekend. I mean, his life, of course, is super endangered in a moment of a mutiny, when there are riots in prisons, and also when Putin maybe thinks like the first person he should get rid of is not Prigozhin, who he can make deals with, but Navalny, who he doesn't want to be in the streets leading a rebellion. Do you think there's any scenario where the opposition can assemble itself inside or outside of prison?
There's no opposition inside. And I've heard there've been a lot of conversation with the outside opposition saying, oh, go to the streets. Like, well, you go to the streets. You're in London and in Berlin, and who is going to go to the streets? But also, it is a Prigozhin appraisal. What kind of deal you can actually have them? Okay, fine. You get Putin out together. Congratulations. What, Navalny is going to withstand the Prigozhin bloody nationalism? No. I heard that. I'm not going to name very important names who've been calling for this, but I think it's, the delusion of outside Russia, being outside Russia, is as delusional as it being, or not as delusional, but quite delusional, as much as those who have delusions in the Kremlin. It's like, yes, it would be, and I think that in some ways, kind of the United States position was a bit like that. Yes, we worry, but at the same time, we're not going to say anything because it gets rid of Putin. Like, okay, great. So let's get rid of Putin and have rapists and murderers in charge, because that will be better.
That was certainly the problem of this uprising, or this mutiny now, that the choice between Putin and Prigozhin is the choice between pest and cholera. And that's why it makes it so difficult for Democrats to support this mutiny.
Well,
Nina?
They shouldn't support this mutiny. This mutiny should not be supported, whether in or out for Putin, because Russia's choice now between slow-moving fascism and fascism with blood, and so these are not the good choices altogether.
Nina Khrushcheva, thank you very, very much for talking to us, and we'll keep watching with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.